You'll have 2 minutes to speak. And I know, and there's, I think, 26 speakers, so that's going to take up about all the time we'll have, so it'll work out pretty good. All right, so with that, we'll start with Tom Donahue, who's actually sitting in the speaker's chair.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for hearing tonight, and right here in our own backyard. It was really convenient. And I want to thank PEGTV for being here and putting this on live tonight so that the public can also watch this and from the comfort of their home. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is actually PEGTV and Vermont Access Network. So what I'm going to do to make this happen quick is I'm going to read the one-pager and then give you backup documentation, and I have copies for all of you. So the one-pager goes like this. The Vermont Access Network, on behalf of Brock Community Action, we want to express our unwavering support for the Vermont Access Network, and specifically the $500,000 appropriation for Vermont's 25 community media centers as cable revenue declines precipitously for them, and the $100,000 appropriation for right-of-way expert analysis and recommendations per the PEG Access Study Bill that Brian had mentioned to me earlier. At Brock Community Action, we communicate our essential services through our PEGTV program, Brock Talk, in both Rutland and Bennington counties. We remain concerned about significant decline in revenue to operate this essential communication tool. PEGTV stations throughout Vermont empower and inform Vermonters regardless of their ability to attend a meeting or hear the details of local and municipal proposals, events, services, and opportunities. With today's public desire for transparency and improved communication, jeopardizing community access television would be a giant step backwards. Please support the Vermont Access Network's request to appropriate state funding in order to ensure Vermonters access to public education and government television throughout the state and further critical study. My second topic is the Vermont Food Bank, and it's the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters initiative. On behalf of Brock Community Action, we want to express our unqualified support for public funding of Vermonters Feeding Vermonters. This important initiative provides fresh, local, healthy food to people facing hunger, improves the health of Vermont families, strengthens the state economy, and provides security to Vermont farmers, and is good for the environment. Vermonters Feeding Vermonters is locally sourced partnerships with dozens of Vermont farms throughout the state, locally distributed in 20 school communities and 10 hospitals, and 215 food shelves, which one of is our Brock Community Food Shelf in Rutland and Bennington, and 39 housing sites. Vermonters Feeding Vermonters is locally accessed, 153 people in Vermont annually. All 14 counties in Vermont are served by this program, with 864,000 servings of fresh produce provided. Please support the Vermont Food Bank's request to appropriate state funding in order to scale up this program, to purchase more food for Vermont farmers and from Vermont farmers, and ensure that more Vermont families have access to our local abundance. And last but not least, our own Micro Business Development Program, MBDP is the acronym you'll hear. And on behalf of Brock Community Action, we want to express our unwavering support for restoring and expanding funding to Vermont's Micro Business Development Program. For years, this highly successful program has provided opportunity to low-income Vermonters through small business counseling to hundreds of startup and expanding micro businesses in the state. Did you know that Bill Cherry, co-founder and president of Switchback Brewery, started in the Micro Business Development Program in Burlington at CVOEO? Here's just the last 2-year performance snapshot of 2018-2019 in this program. Just the 2-year snapshot. I have documentation of the 10-year, which is even more impressive, and I'll give you those documents. But the 2-year goes like this. In the last 2 years, the Micro Business Development Program at the Community Action Organizations, 5 of us, in Vermont, started 206 business starts and expansions, created 159 new jobs, over $2 million in additional capital leveraged, and the state investment was only $3,748 per job. We implore you to restore the $300,000 and recently expanded $100,000 to the Micro Business Development Program in Vermont. Now that's only $80,000 per program. Last year in our shop at Brock Community Action, we actually started 11 new businesses, expanded 7, created 14 full-time jobs, and leveraged over $130,000. And we did that with just an $80,000 program for micro business development. These are the small 1 to 2 person shops. But they could end up being the next Switchback Brewery, who knows? So we implore you to restore this funding, and let's continue to lift low-income Vermonters out of poverty with this successful business startup, job creation program, and all within the Vermont Community Action Network. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom. So, Tom, and anybody else that has documents they want us to have, just when you get done speaking, leave them right over there on the table.
Perfect.
And we'll gather them up before we leave.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Will not is here as well.
Yeah. And by the way, Representative Will Knott is here. He is in the back of the room. Hi,
With
Will.
green tie on.
Yes, so Penny Jones?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I am the Meals on Wheels office manager, and I'm here to voice continued support for the Vermont Association of Area Agencies on Aging, Choices for Care Base, and especially the Meals on Wheels provider increases. Our Vermont seniors should have good care and the food they need and deserve the choice to stay at home. I've been with Meals on Wheels for almost 24 years and have firsthand experience with Meals on Wheels. My father-in-law was on Meals on Wheels, and it allowed him the dignity to stay at home, get a nutritious meal, get a well-being check every day, and allowed me and my husband to continue to work. Meals on Wheels provides a friendly visit and a well-being check in addition to the nutritious meal, and has been proven to keep seniors in their homes longer and have shorter hospital stays, which saves us all money. Our Vermont seniors have worked hard all of their lives. The Meals on Wheels program and the Choices for Care program allows Vermonters to enjoy the freedom and their time with their families without worrying about financial dependence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
The next up is Doug Jones.
I'm Doug Jones, with the General Manager with the Meals on Wheels in Rutland. Just want to continue support. Over the years, we've been fortunate to never having a wait list, and hopefully we continue that, because as food keeps on rising, it's getting harder to maintain that funding. So it is we try to source our food around as much as we can, but it's getting harder all the time. So as prices increase, it makes it harder. The Meals on Wheels also has that well-being check every day, which makes a big difference. So if something's not quite right, we have contacts to make sure they're okay. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next would be Joe Dasher. Welcome, sir.
Greetings to all. My name is Joe Darsh, and I'm the Network Relations Manager at the Vermont Food Bank. And I'm here to express my support for new state funding in the amount of $500,000 for the Vermont Food Bank to scale up our Vermonters Feeding Vermonters initiative, buying local, first-quality produce directly from Vermont farms to share with people facing hunger. For the better part of the last decade, the Vermont Food Bank has been educating folks and encouraging the consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables as a means for better nutrition and health outcomes. Our VT Fresh demonstrations at local food shelves provide the opportunity for customers to taste how good and to see just how easy it is to prepare healthy food. Customers leave the food shelf with fresh produce, a few recipes, and the skills to prepare them. In addition to food shelves and meal sites, the Vermont Food Bank also distributes fresh produce on a monthly basis at 20 school communities, now 11 hospitals, and 39 affordable housing sites. The structure is in place and has been working extremely well. Expanding Vermonters Feeding Vermonters with state funding would help get more fresh local food to people in need. The fact that this funding would provide financial security to local Vermont farmers is a big plus. Vermonters Feeding Vermonters, by its very nature, helps to establish a closer bond between farmers and the charitable food network. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next up would be Melinda Hart. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
All righty.
Thank you. So my name is Melinda Hart. I'm the excuse me while I stumble over my own job title. I'm the Farm-Based Experiential Learning Education Coordinator at the Vermont Farmers Food Center. which is also known as the big green building where the indoor farmers market is. So through our work, we reach the community at many different levels to provide farm and garden-based educational programs to the greater Rutland community. And I'm here on the behalf of all farm-to-school programs throughout Vermont. The benefits of farm-to-school-based education are wide-ranging in Vermont's education system, and in fact, in today's society as a whole. Connection to food, local farms, healthy eating habits, nature, community, and self are all developed in farm-to-school programming. It provides students and educators alike a solid foundation to grow and thrive from. In working in farm and nature-based education programs for the last 15 years and growing up on a farm myself, I've experienced firsthand the vast transformative nature of these programs. Many studies have shown the positive effects of farm to school on its participants, but bigger than that, common sense dictates that having a sense of place and purpose in the world can only lead to healthier and happier people. Growing a plant does that. Harvesting food you grew yourself does that. Vermont is a traditionally rural and agricultural community, and as our cultural heritage begins to fade, the sense of loss that hangs in younger generations can be palpable. With the simple idea of connecting Vermont children back into the soil where their roots once grew, I truly believe we can reshape and redefine how farms and food go hand in hand with community resilience. Overall, our ask is $500,000 in funding to annually support the Farm to School and Early Education Program. Please work toward getting us to that $500,000 goal. And at very least, please ensure that funding to for Farm to School does not decrease. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Beth Miller from Rutland.
Hi, thank you for the time you're taking today. My name is Beth Miller, and I am a staff member at the Parent-Child Center of Rutland County. I'd first like to thank you for your support for all the PCC network last year. The main focus of the PCC of Rutland County is to eliminate the barriers that perpetuate poverty. One of the ways we do this is by providing access to healthy food. Most of the families that we work with at the PCC are low-income and working families, the working poor, a great many of which do not have access to healthy foods and are unable to afford consistent meals. How can we expect children and families to move out of poverty and thrive if they are hungry? The PCC has developed a comprehensive food program to make healthy food available at no cost to any community member who walks through our doors, and we rely greatly on our community partners like Vermonters Feeding Vermonters through the Vermont Food Bank. Through Vermonters Feeding Vermonters, meat and produce is made available free of charge to families who might not otherwise find it affordable or accessible, while also supporting the hardworking farmer. These farmers have proudly showed up with produce in hand, knowledge and resources, and a willingness and commitment to build a strong and sustainable community. We're proud of the positive outcomes the PCC's food program is having on our community. Providing access to quality food is one of the very best investments we can make to help alleviate poverty, and Vermonters Feeding Vermonters helps us achieve this goal. Please support the Parent-Child Center bills, Senate 263 and House 687. We understand these two are different decisions, but appreciate your support. Please fully fund the Parent-Child Center's essential work with families with young children. Our ask for the upcoming year is $4 million and $10 million over the next 3 years. And finally, please lend your support for new state funding in the amount of $500,000 for the Vermont Food Bank to scale up the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters initiative. Thank you for your time and continued support of the Parent-Child Center of Rutland County.
Thank you. The next speaker is Brenda Kingsbury from Rutland.
Hi, my name is Brenda Kingsbury, and I am the Program Director for the Rutland site at the Parent-Child Center. I would like to take advantage of this moment and thank the committee for the financial support given to the Parent-Child Center in the last year. It has been greatly appreciated. Please support the Parent-Child Center bills S263 and H687. We understand these are two different decisions, but appreciate your support. Please fully fund the Parent-Child Center's essential work with families with young children. Our ask for the upcoming year is the $4 million and $10 million over the next 3 years. So I have worked in the early childhood education field for both the Rutland and the Brandon populations. And regardless of my role for the early childhood education piece, it has remained a critical service for the families. All families have obstacles and different needs for using the Parent-Child Center. But one thing they all have in common is the need for safe, positive, and positive role models for their children and families. All families love their children, and as early childhood educators, we can offer a non-judgmental approach to supporting the individual needs of our families. Some families count on us as the total package in raising their young child, and we take that very seriously. We also offer extended hours for working families, and this cost is not covered by subsidy. Every day there is a new story in how our team strengthens and changes the lives of the families we serve at the Parent-Child Center. As I was preparing in my mind for the response for this public hearing today, a story unfolded, and I'd like to share that story. We have a family whose history includes drug addiction, homelessness, and a lack of job security. They have been at the Parent-Child Center for over a year, and in that year we have watched them stay clean, get a home, and pursue higher education and employment. Today they brought their children to the center like they always do, but today their car was breaking down as they were going home from the center. The family trusted me and asked me to get their children home somehow. They asked for help. This is a hard thing for people to do, especially if I don't know where they live and I have no car seats. So it took me 3 hours off and on throughout my day, but I figured it out and got the children home to their family. The mom was so appreciative, and I made some nice memories with the children singing in the car while we were lost in West Rutland. We need the opportunity to continue providing quality services for our communities. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. The next is Deborah Wesley?
Good evening. I am Deborah Wesley, CEO of Addison County Home Health and Hospice. With me this evening is Brian Young, our board president, Lisa Roberts, our board vice president, Karen Leaders, a member of our board, and Amy Curtis, our waiver program coordinator. We're asking that you make our Choices for Care program solvent through rate increases and home health provider tax relief. Statewide, the VNA's most recent loss is a total of $4 million, a 27% loss statewide. Our loss ourselves will be over $436,000 to support this program. Our reimbursement rate is 27% less than the cost to provide the essential care to our most vulnerable patients. The Medicaid provider tax annual for fiscal year 2019 for our agency was $409,655. For fiscal year 18, $377,084. And for fiscal year 17, it was $357,143. The elements that make this program, these are the elements that make this program unsustainable, but this program is essential, and in fact saves the state money by keeping patients and families in their own homes instead of residing in facilities. Addison County is the provider of care for the patients of Addison County, and we provide care for over 450 patients daily. More than 130 of these programs patients are enrolled in our Choices for Care program. The program provides basic essential care and services that allow patients to remain as independent as possible in their own homes with the assistance for activities of daily living, things that we take for granted. Our residents are too frail and they could not travel here to speak, and they asked me to convey their message. This is from a family member. My parents began experiencing difficulties when my mother returned home after a hip replacement. My father had been long struggling with failing health. My mother had been managing to support much of his care until her own health changed. Addison County Home Health enrolled us in Choices for Care program, and we were able to receive a homemaker, assistance in their home. Meal prep, light housekeeping, laundry were the official tasks for which my parents benefited, in which their children were very grateful. We have to have others care for them since they worked and were not available during the daytime hours. Our family had peace of mind knowing that there were eyes on our parents and they were able to live in their own home with some degree of independence. As my parents aged in place and their health further declined, the program continued to meet their needs, and we were able to honor their final wishes and allow them to die in their own home and not in an institution. If it were not for the Choices for Care program, I feel our family would not have been able to manage the complexities of having two parents facing serious medical issues at the same time, and one or both likely would have not been able to remain in the home, and they would have had to reside in an institution. This program is an essential service for Vermonters and needs to become a solvent program to support our aging population. To be clear, without this program, many elderly Vermonters would be forced to live in facilities, not in their own homes, where they are the most comfortable and where they would most often like to remain. Thank you.
Thank you. The next would be Karen Louders.
Karen Leaders, but nobody is expected to
Nobody
pronounce it
can-
properly.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting this evening. I am on the board of Addison County Home Health and Hospice. This is the hearing we were told to come to share our concerns about budget matters having to do with choices for care. Deb just spoke quite wonderfully about that. It seems that all roads lead to the cost of health care. That's property taxes, education funding, state taxes. Everything we do is somehow driven by the extreme expense of health care. And I have the belief that Addison County Home Health and Hospice and other home health agencies provide the best value of health care to be found in the state. It must be emphasized every time Addison County or any other home care provider does its work, it saves the overall system millions of dollars because these folks are not in an institutional setting, they're not in a hospital, they're home. And yet, when I first joined Addison County Home Health Board about 5 years ago, Choices for Care seemed like a wonderful program. The people would get help in their home, the people providing the care would get paid the living wage, and the overall system would be saved millions of dollars. But in fact, what happens is when people provide that care, it's not covered. It actually costs quite a bit more to provide the care in the home than the reimbursement rate that happens. Why is this at a loss? Because the reimbursement rate right now for Choices for Care is substantially less than that is what is required for the care given in the home, excellent health care, necessary pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, and all the documentation that goes along with that. Imagine then, once you provide this care, you're then taxed on the value of that care. Why is this essential care that is provided at a loss taxed? Well, that is because when you pay this tax, it's matched by federal grants, by federal money, so it gets doubled. Well, the reason why that tax existed was to go back into the healthcare system, but it doesn't do that. Somehow it gets diverted somewhere else. And for the Choices for Care program, we lose about, just in our county, $400,000 a year. And the tax that we pay in fiscal 19 is estimated to be $410,000, but will more likely be $502,000. So we pay a tax on a program that is by necessity generates a loss. So I urge you to fund the program adequately. It's the best deal in town, and with limited resources, it seems like the value is in this kind of programming as opposed to some other programs that are getting a lot of funding and see a large profit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next up would be Bonnie Prichard. Bonnie, you get the Best Penmanship Award.
Thank you. Hello. I'm a sixth grade teacher at Clarendon Elementary, and I represent our sixth graders who produce the educational show Learning Our Way. I'm here to testify in support of the Vermont Access Network in a request for $500,000 appropriation for community media centers and $100,000 for right-of-way revenue expert analysis and recommendations. PEGTV gives CES learners a voice and a chance to share their learning with the community by producing a show that gives viewers a glimpse of education at a local elementary school. CES learners have chosen to show the community what it is like to learn in 2020. Project-based learning and the use of technology have infused education. State-mandated transferable skills such as clear and effective communication, creative and practical problem solving, and informed and integrative thinking drive projects like Learning Our Way that allow learners to practice these skills. Learning Our Way is in its third year of production. CES learners write, film, and edit their own show with the support of PEGTV. Each year, the class develops their own show format and topics. Learners have created segments focused on English language arts, global citizenship, math, science, and news. They use filming equipment borrowed from PEGTV. PEG staff visit the school for support as needed, and learners visit the station for training sessions and use the studios for special segments, such as a game show created from their geography research and a cooking episode around a novel they read. This year's learners are highlighting their individual passions, which they do research and projects on throughout the school year. The series is about kids who travel around the world and learn about different places, gathering objects, and make connections to their passions. As you can imagine, creating a TV show is difficult. A learner-driven TV show is very difficult and challenging. However, it is in the work done, the reflection taken, and the problem-solving that occurs that our learners grow. The children are not only our future, they are our now. Their voices deserve to be heard and need to be shared. PEGTV Community Media Center provides our young citizens with an opportunity to learn, but even more important, it gives them an opportunity to share their voice in a participatory democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Ron Chaffee.
So we're going to do something a little different here. We're going to tag team you. We've got a presentation that's going to be 2 minutes. And first thing, my name is Ron Chaffee, CEO of the VNA and Hospice of the Southwest Region. And I want to introduce Marley Mason, our Choices for Care coordinator. Dan DiBattista is the president of our volunteer board of directors. And also here to make sure we get the numbers correct is Sara King, our chief financial officer. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to testify. We're not going to duplicate. You heard from Addison County Home Health. Okay, in the state of Vermont, all VNAs lost over $4 million on this particular program. Our particular agency lost $632,000 last year. Okay, one thing I want you to know about the program, since its inception, since 1990s, I've been around for 39 years. There are 500 less nursing home beds in the state of Vermont. You look at the average cost for a nursing home is about $80,000. So multiply that times 500, I think that's about a $40 million savings. So this program is invaluable. So I want Marley to tell you a little bit about the kind of patient that we take care of.
Good evening. I was going to give a description of the program, but I don't need to because Addison County did a wonderful job. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a gentleman that we serve. We have a gentleman on our program that when he was 15 years old had a diving accident, and which resulted in him becoming a quadriplegic. From the time he was 15 until he was 35, he was in and out of nursing homes. He lived with his mother when he was home, and she took care of him. In the early 90s, his mother passed away, and he had limited options. 1992, he joined Choices for Care, and he's been on our program for 28 years. We talked to him extensively, and he'll go on and on about how he would have been in a nursing home for the past 28 years, and he's absolutely correct. We provide 135 hours of care every 2 weeks. We have made his home handicap accessible. He's able to get out into the community and interact, and he will tell you how invaluable this has been to him. He's one client. We have hundreds of clients. They all have stories, and all of them, every client in the Choices for Care program is nursing home level of care. So if you tag on to what Ron said, the expense of trying to afford to care for all these people in a nursing home is extraordinary, and it isn't the right thing to do. This program gives them a choice to stay home or stay in the environment of their choice. It keeps husbands with wives, it keeps parents with children, and it allows people to be independent and live their life to the best of their ability. Thank you.
Good evening. As Ron mentioned, I'm Dan DiBattista. I'm the chair of the Board of Directors for the VNA and Hospice of the Southwest Region. As Ron mentioned, losses last year in 2019 were over $600,000 on this program. And if you look over a 10-year period, it's over $2.3 million. So, you know, the hard facts are, as a Board of Directors, we have to take a very, very hard look at that program, as those losses are not sustainable as time goes on. So your consideration of this is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dan.
So I'm just going to end it with, you know, one more thing that you need to hear about, and that it gets into staffing for the program. You know, the reimbursement rates are so low, it is very difficult to find staff. At our agency, the turnover rate is 70% for personal care assistants, and our vacancy rate is 25%. So very difficult to find people to work in this particular program to keep people at home. So you're going to hear about this from other VNAs around the state, so I thank you for listening, and we appreciate all the hard work that you guys do, and thank you for letting us be here tonight.
Thanks, Ron. Next up is Liz Filskoff.
Good evening. I'm Liz Vilsco. I am here on behalf of Vermont After School. With a $2.5 million annual state investment, After School for All could be available to all of Vermont's children. The After School for All grant program was originally funded with $600,000 in one-time funds, allocated over 2 years through a plan submitted in 2018. The funds have now been allocated, and demand for after-school programming is extremely high. I don't know any working parents that do not utilize their after-school program. After-school programming is good for kids, it's good for parents, it's good for the economy, and it's good for communities. As you may know, I worked in the public schools for 17 years, the last 10 in Rutland City, and I know firsthand the positive outcomes for children who have after-school programs available to them, versus the less positive outcomes for children who do not have these opportunities. As a working parent, I have relied on after-school programming to provide a safe and constructive environment for my children to go while I'm still working and outside of their school hours. After School for All provides community connection, opportunities for new learning, and access to recreation and other valuable extracurricular activities like world language, music, and art. It also provides for a safe, nurturing environment for Vermont's children during normal business hours and outside of regular school hours. Strong communities with healthy and happy children provide opportunities for them to explore new interests, connect with others, build skills, and work with nurturing adults. After School for All programming also provides income opportunities for many of us with advanced degrees who own homes in Vermont and who benefit from additional income opportunities within our areas of expertise. This additional income is then spent in the local business economy, at the local coffee shop, bookstore, fitness center, and clothing boutiques. Please appropriate $2.5 million in statewide funding from the general fund budget for After School for All, so that Vermont and its children and families may thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be Justin Franco of Rutland. Is Justin here? Justin.
It's Justine, and here I come.
Justine.
There's a traffic jam.
Justine, I'm sorry, ma'am. I apologize.
That's okay. You're not the first, actually.
Your penmanship's pretty good, too.
Thank you. I know. I did get an award in penmanship. I actually did. My name is Justine Franco, and I am the board chair of the Rutland County Parent-Child Center. I personally want to thank you for all of the generous support that you've given parent-child centers in the past. Currently, though, my number one role is that of mother to a toddler. While pregnant, the obstetrician had no shortage of services for me. However, after the birth and the celebrations were over, I was alone for about 10 hours a day as a stay-at-home mom. I'm a pretty educated woman, and I felt utterly in the dark. By the time my daughter was 18 months old, I suspected that my daughter wasn't speaking well. When she should have been saying short sentences, she had only 3 words in her repertoire:
The doctor said she'd grow out of it, but I found myself searching the web for childhood delays and watching YouTube videos and going down rabbit holes. I didn't believe that I qualified for assistance from any sort of programs, but on a whim, and because I was on the board, I called the Parent-Child Center, and there actually was hope. Help was there for me, and within a week, I had a visit from a social worker, soon followed by weekly visits from a very engaged speech pathologist. My daughter loved them and thrived. Those visits were not just for her, they were for me as well. The Parent-Child Center is expedient, robust, and supportive. They understand families and long-term catastrophic risks for denying children services that they need very early on. Please help fund the Parent-Child Center's essential work for families with young children. Our ask is for $4 million over the next year with a cumulative total of $10 million over the next 3 years. Please support the Parent-Child Center Bill S-263 and H-687. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Another legislator just walked in the door, Robin Chestnut Tangerman from Middletown and other towns.
And other towns.
The next up is Mary Feldman.
Hello. My name is Mary Feldman, and I am the Executive Director of the Rutland County Parent-Child Center. RCPCC is home to 50 committed and talented staff. Across our programs, we have 850 touch points for families on a monthly basis. Trying to catch my breath, I just derobed a baby. Our reach is far in the community. I would like to thank you for all you have done to support the Parent-Child Center network. RCPCC experienced a catastrophic flood this year. Because of the one-time monies from the state and a grant from the governor, we were able to keep our doors open and continue to serve Rutland community. You did this for us, and we are deeply grateful. RCPCC builds on the core strengths that are found in each and every family, whether a 16-year-old parent, a person in recovery, a member of the workforce needing extra support, or a grandparent raising a child. Our prevention work stabilizes families. In recognizing the importance of early childhood education, Rutland County Parent-Child Center is building a 2-gen whole family learning center so that both parents and children have a safe space to learn and thrive together. This center will help stabilize the workforce in Rutland now and over the next 20 years as those children age out. Over the past 3 years of my leadership at RCPCC, we've received multiple funding cuts. Our operating budget was $1.7 million, with a loss of over $400,000 in funding streams. We stand to face an additional loss of $100,000 this year because of CIS equalizing the reimbursement rate. Last summer, the Child Development Division of DCF paid consultants to find out the base rate for what it takes to deliver CIS services. The consultant found a rate of $634, while the new statewide reimbursement rate offered to the Parent-Child Center is $502. So the cost does not cover the cost of services. The impact of that state's leveled rate means a $100,000 cut for CIS in Rutland County, yet we're expected to deliver the same services with no change in the contract. The staff at RCPCC will carry the cost of this burden through low salaries and no health insurance. Most importantly, the leveling of this amount will impact the services that children are desperately in need of. We asked the legislature to fund CIS at a level that would cover the cost of providing the services, which would mean a $2.4 million increase in CIS funding in FY21. We ask that you please support the Parent-Child Center bills S-263 and H-687. We understand that these are two separate decisions, but we appreciate your support. Finally, we ask that you fund the Parent-Child Center's essential work with families and young children. Our ask for the upcoming year is $4 million across the network and $10 million across the network over the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Vicki Young from Proctor.
Thank you. I'm Vicki Young in Proctor, and I'm really here in a very celebratory state. I have been working with a group to celebrate the centennial of women's suffrage in this country. And when I think about it and chat with my daughters and my granddaughters, they assume that they are full partners in our society. My grandmother didn't have the chance to vote until she was over 50. My mother was energized, I think, by her mother's frustration and became very engaged in politics on a volunteer level. Well, I think we do have an opportunity and a need to celebrate what women's right is in this country. And so several years ago, the Vermont League of Women Voters reached out to form the Vermont Suffrage Centennial Alliance. It really doesn't roll off your tongue, but you can say VSCA. So there are now about 40 organizations around the state that are represented in this effort and working on education programs, celebratory programs, et cetera, et cetera. The information that I give is part of the story, but I think the bigger part of the story is that this is just energized women to recognize the importance of this right that we have, to communicate that, and to celebrate it with their parents and grandparents if still alive. So this little group, not a little group, it's got 40 organizations working on it, VSCA, is working to organize and sponsor events throughout the year that will very much tell the story, offer vignettes about suffrage and how it evolved since the very early days of some very, very feisty and not well-treated women. So I do have some materials for you, but the main event is on August 22nd, and it's the Parade and Suffrage Fest in Montpelier. There's also going to be a symposium in May, a 5K run in August, lectures, an original play that's being developed, all of this, speakers bureaus to go throughout the state, to work in schools, community groups, etc. So there has been established a speakers bureau, and so organizations and schools throughout the state can enact that as well. So this is mostly volunteer work. There are a few staff members, but the reason that I'm here is that I do know that Representative Jessup is going to be proposing a budget grant of $20,000 to the League of Women Voters of Vermont Education Fund, and this grant would cover most of the costs of that August 22nd event and hopefully other activities throughout the state. So a centennial only happens once every 100 years, and so I am very hopeful that some funding will be available to support this delightful, uplifting activity. Thank you.
Thank you. The next up is Ted Barnett of Rutland.
My name is Ted Barnett, and I'm a data analyst at the Rutland County Parent-Child Center. I would first like to thank you for your support of Parent-Child Centers last year. These one-time funds that were allocated were absolutely essential in helping us recover from a devastating flood, so we really appreciate it. I'm going to do a little bit, it's going to be a little circuitous, but I'll get to my point, I promise. Before working for RCPCC, I worked in an organization called Innovations for Poverty Action. It's an organization that uses cutting-edge techniques to measure the impact and efficacy of pro-poor programs and policies around the world. These techniques were what won Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, and Michael Kramer the 2019 Nobel Prize in Economics. At Innovations for Poverty Action, I visited organizations all over the world, including the Robin Hood Foundation here in the US, to learn how they collect data and maximize the power of their work. These interactions became case studies in an award-winning book authored by Professors Dean Carlin at Northwestern and Mary K. Gugerty at the University of Washington. This book is called The Goldilocks Challenge, Right Fit Evidence for the Social Sector. So that's enough about me. The point is that through this work, I know how to tell if an organization is making a difference in the world. And after a year in Rutland, I can wholeheartedly say that parent-child centers are vitally important to the fabric of the state. And in fact, I moved from Florida to the Rutland area to continue building 2-gen programming with Mary Zigman, Feldman, our executive director. Parent-child centers use an evidence-backed 2-gen approach that mitigates ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. It fights addiction and promotes economic well-being. Services are provided in a supportive community that breaks bread together and shares successes and failures together. This combination of impact and compassion is truly unique, and among the many organizations here and abroad, parent-child centers deserve your support. And don't take my word for it. You're more than welcome to come visit us. We will give you a tour and show you this work firsthand. And since I'm from a parent-child center, you know what's coming next. Please support Parent-Child Center Bills S263 and H687. We understand that these are two different decisions, but appreciate your support. And please fully fund the Parent-Child Center's essential work with families with young children. Our ask for the coming year is $4 million and $10 million over the next 3 years. Thank you.
All right, next is Christopher Lera. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
Ready.
It's easier than the full name, which is Scott O'Lara. That's a full. Ladies, gentlemen, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
For the past 22 years, I've worn a lot of hats in this state, working for different social service organizations, and hats better than this one. And a lot of my colleagues are here from the new Parent-Child Center of Rutland County. And it's really been a privilege, even with all my experience variety-wise in terms of, the companies that I've worked for and the agencies that I've worked for. Since I've come to PCC last year, right around the time the flood happened, right around the time the money coming from the state was enabling that, right around the time I saw the leadership at the Rutland County Parent-Child Center to resurrect that and renovate the Chamberlain Center, it's been a privilege to see all that. And, so leadership is important, top down, bottom up. It has to exist, and I've seen it firsthand. And so in the year and a half that I've been there here on Pleasant Street, it's been my privilege. So I hope you consider us for the 2020 ask. Numbers, millions, thousands, we're all in this together to meet people where they are. And we meet a lot of people where they're at in very desperate, in need situations that are prolonged. And the best way to do this work, from my point of view, is I see myself and everybody I work for. And I think that can permeate everybody, no matter what side of the table. We all have a stake in making Rutland a better place. Now, as a NatureWorks and Special Events Coordinator, I run about 3 programs. The most important of which, I think, is moving into the 2-gen center. And so it's vital in the sense that the Learning Together high school, the alternative high school that exists at the PCC, I think it's important that these young mothers and these young women in need have access and accessibility to their children in the same building. So the EC is right there. So the idea that everybody is together, I think, is essential, as opposed to two different locations. And the whole mantra, removing the barriers that perpetuate poverty, I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And when you see it in practice, it really is humbling. And I think we can get lost in taglines and numbers and millions and resources. But at the end of the day, and I'll wrap this up, the best part of my job is that I get to work with a lot of people who are in this room, all for the same cause, which is just to help people who really just need help, okay? With that said, whether we're reducing childhood custody rates or we're fighting addiction to aftercare programs or lowering rising healthcare costs, promoting healthy child development and access to quality care, it's also about integrating these young people with the job skills and the education so they can become integral and they stay in Vermont, because we're losing people every year. And so I think it's important to fund resources like the Parent-Child Centers statewide with that mantra. Removing the barriers that perpetuate poverty and creating resources and systems that help keep people here to become part of the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is, I believe, Lera Goodwin? Sara. That is Sara, okay.
Good evening. My name is Sara Goodwin, and I am a single mother. I lost my mother at age 8, and relationships with all family became non-existent. I was then placed in foster care in the state of Vermont. Usually there's not much hope for success in ex-foster children. I fell pregnant in late 2018. My son's father is dangerous and violent, and so I fled. A year ago today, I lived in a vehicle with nothing but a backpack to my name. I moved here to Rutland after the birth of my son and immediately began my search for outreach and support. Rutland Parent-Child Center has overwhelmed me with compassion, efforts, and support. I have a new apartment of my own thanks to them, and today I know that I am not alone. I am in school through them to finish my high school degree and to move further into college, which was near impossible before Rutland County Parent-Child Center's outreach. My son and I are happy, safe, stable, and loved, all thanks to my hard work and the selfless devotion of all of those who work with the Rutland County Parent-Child Center. We are not alone, and we will never have to be again. The impact the Parent-Child Center has on families and so many lost people is profound. Without them, so many of us would be lost and without hope. Thank you for your time. They inspire me to work hard and to become financially independent and able to take care of myself and my son for the rest of our lives. Please support the Child Center Bills S-263 and H-687. Please fully fund the Parent-Child Center's essential work with families such as mine. For the upcoming year, we are asking for $1 million. Thank you so much for your consideration and your time.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Sarah.
Thank you.
Next up is Donna Bailey of Bristol.
That's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Bristol.
Good evening. Thanks for all that you do. My name is Donna Bailey, and I'm the director of the Addison County Parent-Child Center. And I'm a resident of Bristol, Vermont. I first want to say that I was coming here with a mom also, and she has a sick child, so wasn't able to come. But she asked, I read her testimony, and she asked that I share a piece of it, and that is that she wants you to fully support the Parent-Child Centers, and the word she used was she came with a cracked foundation, and we helped to fill in the cracks so that she's whole and can grow and be self-sufficient and have a better life for her and her children. So with that, I also ask that you support the Parent-Child Centers, and before that, I ask that you support direct services in the state of Vermont and not cut the direct services that are listed in the governor's budget. Every year, we struggle to find funds and are threatened, and you all usually do the right thing. But the governor's budget cuts things such as the specialized child care positions, transportation, and other pieces, while at the same time saying we have more money for child care. But if the programs and the systems that help support access to that child care and help kids be able to get there, help families stay in high-quality child care, if those programs are being cut, there isn't a net gain for us as a state and as individual organizations. I ask that you support the Parent-Child Centers and the statute update and the work of S-263 and H-687 and acknowledge the years of work that Parent-Child Centers have done in helping Vermont families to stay healthy and support the hubs of early childhood work in Vermont with multi-generational support. We are unique in the state of Vermont that we have 15 Parent-Child Centers that cover every inch of this state for services, and I think that's something to be proud of and to support. We save money by doing the work in prevention so that It saves many children going into both custody, but also our adjudication rates are lower than in many states, and so families are better off. Parent-child centers use the Strengthening Families framework and a 2-generational approach to deliver our 8 core services to families in need of help. The Addison County Parent-Child Center was one of the national models on which Strengthening Families is based. So we've been doing this work, and we do parenting classes to playgroups, to information referrals, and parent-child centers help families to build their own strength and provide loving environments for their children. Our prevention programs and services ensure that parents have knowledge, skills, and resources they need to care for their children, and we can strengthen families and communities they live in. Prevention work saves money. Every dollar invested in building healthy communities reduces the demand on our healthcare system and helps to ensure that more people will be healthier for longer periods of time in their lives. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up would be Steve Chamberlain from Castleton. Hi, Steve.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for this opportunity.
Welcome.
My name's Stephen Chamberlain. I run Duchess Farm in Castleton, Vermont. We've been in business since 1986. I'm here in support of new state funding in the amount of $500,000 for the Vermont Food Bank to scale up their Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program. I know that Vermonters Feeding Vermonters directly benefits families receiving fresh produce. As a participating farmer of the program, I've often heard how much people appreciate and are excited to receive ours and all the fresh local produce from the food bank's Veggie Van Go van. Over the years, we have had many young people in school groups at our farm. Many have had no prior knowledge of how sweet and vibrant fresh food is and are amazed at what they see growing and how it tastes. Many of our elderly customers for many years absolutely rely on fresh produce for their continued good health. I know there are so many Vermonters we are not reaching due to simple economics. I believe that the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program, which I've been a part of for a few years, is a well-run program and would, if scaled up, address a significant amount of this fulfilled need. And it also benefits. This program also benefits the participating farmers. The food is distributed in larger lots, and the farm receives a wholesale price. Thanks a lot for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Next up is Heather Martin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Martin. I'm the director of the Castleton Early Education Center that will be opening this summer. And I'm here to speak on behalf of just broad childcare funding in general. That includes the Teach Scholarship Program, the Loan Repayment Program, Wage Support Program, and the investment into childcare financial assistance. So a little bit about the center. It will provide high-quality childcare and pre-K to Rutland County families and also serve as a training program for Castleton's new early education degree program. If successful, this program will help to remedy the early educator staffing crisis that we are facing right now in Vermont. That is especially acute also in central and southern Vermont. The biggest challenge this program is going to face in the first year of operation is going to be lack of qualified workforce. And over time, the university's degree program will help remedy that situation, so it does have a solution that's coming in progress. But investment into early education right now will really help put us over the edge so that we can have a successful framework for early education in Vermont. I want to thank you for your support into early education last year. It made a substantial difference to so many families, especially the investment into the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. Continuing to invest in education in the next budget cycle it's a critical time right now. The investment in Teach will help current educators to access new educational opportunities that are being created because we're actively working on higher education right now. The loan repayment assistance encourages people to continue their degrees that they're already enrolled in, and it makes it an attractive field for those who already have loans. So it can help us kind of stop the bleed of early educators leaving the workforce because they don't want to invest in higher education. The wage support program will be key to attracting new people to the field and helping to reset the wage scale so that it can be a profession, not just a temporary job where we have somebody come in, get trained, work for 6 months, and leave. This will help centers to grow, expand, maintain high quality. The wage support program will help the Castleton Early Education Program to hire and retain qualified workers, as it will for all early education programs. But it's really critical for this program so that we can be training new people for the workforce. It's going to provide 68 high-quality childcare spots in the Rutland area, and one of our goals is to attract new workers to the Rutland area and help increase our workforce and be a benefit to all professions in the area because parents will have a place to put their children. So the investment into the Child Care Financial Assistance Program will allow parents to attend school and work as they further their careers, allowing all of our Vermont workforce to be better trained. It will help to stabilize center income, allowing centers to raise staff wages on their own. A really quick example of the math, right now, the actual cost of caring for an infant, for example, is about $450 a week. That's not actually what centers are currently charging, but if you were going to figure in staff benefits and a fair wage for staff, it would realistically cost you about that much. A 5-star center right now only gets reimbursed at $280 per week, and the actual cost is $450. So it's not meeting what we need. That's too low for the staff to pay for professional development or extra coverage for planning time, entirely too low to pay for substitute coverage or sick or vacation time benefits for teachers. And this, again, is for an infant room. Centers typically lose money when they serve infants and try to make up that gap with preschool tuition. So this is why it's critical that we really invest in this Child Care Financial Assistance Program so that we can stabilize the income of all the classrooms. It's not sustainable to have one classroom in a center just losing money and expecting the rest. You wouldn't do that in any other business model. So the reimbursement rates need to be increased so that every classroom in the center is financially viable. This will help us to create and sustain child care centers as longer-term small business investments in Vermont. And I also want to add that the early investment education that we have done in Vermont is actually getting national attention, so that was really exciting. Just wanted to mention that to all of you. And I brought testimony, which I will put over there from a child care worker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Rosemary Moser. Yeah.
I'm Rosemary Moser, and I also live in Middletown Springs. I'm here today to ask you to support investments in early care and education professionals through the Teach Scholarship Program, a student loan repayment assistance program for early childhood educators, and a temporary wage support program for early educators. I've been an early educator for over 35 years. I've worked in a diverse array of settings, from family child care programs, private, publicly funded, and college-based centers to summer camps. In all that time, I've never made a livable wage. I've never had health insurance or any other employment benefits. And during most of those years, I've been only a husband away from poverty. I came to Vermont in 1996 when my only child was 6 years old. I'd earned my Associate of Science degree in early childhood education less than a year before she was born. At that time, I was unable to find a high-quality infant care program in our community in which I could work and place my child, so I opened and ran a family child care program during her earliest years. When we arrived in Vermont, we'd barely begun the homeschool adventure that would be my first priority until she would choose to go to high school as a sophomore. During our homeschool years, I worked part-time, often at more than one job, in a child care center, providing private child care, with the Mother Goose Early Literacy Program, running our local after-school program, and or as an instructor in VSA Vermont's Start with the Arts training program for early educators. After my daughter left home, she and her husband now own a home in Barrie, I asked myself, now what? Over the years, I'd often thought about going back to school. In the 90s, the biggest obstacle was that being in Rutland County, there weren't any colleges in the area offering a bachelor's degree in early education. I couldn't be sure of the quality of what was offered online, nor could I afford such courses on an early educator's income. I also began to see that having a higher degree wouldn't necessarily increase my potential salary opportunities all that much. At one interview, I was told they could offer me $12 an hour. This is with like 30 years of experience. It could have been $15 an hour if I had a BA. Although more possible ways to further my education were becoming available over time, I was growing older, and I realized that even with a higher degree, I would never recoup my investment in such an endeavor. You might ask why I've stayed in this field. The answer is that very early on, I realized that the first years of life are the most critical ones to future health and success in life. I believe that when I make a difference in the lives of children, and by extension their families, in doing so I make a difference in my community, my nation, and in the greater world. The Onset Prevention Fund tells us that early childhood programs are the most cost-effective way to ensure the healthy development of children and offer the greatest returns to society. That is what has motivated me. Thankfully, my marriage has survived the decades so far, and I've been able to continue to follow my passion to serve in this way. But I don't want younger early care and education professionals to find themselves in my shoes, nor do I want dedicated, skilled teachers to be compelled to leave the field as so many have due to the lack of respect and compensation that they so rightly deserve. Current brain science now provides hard proof of what the social sciences have long found. We know that young children's brains make 1 million neural connections per second. We know that about 80% of brain development occurs by age 3, 90% by age 5. So why wouldn't we want the best educated and prepared adults possible serving as caregivers and educators for Vermont's youngest learners? I am grateful for the legislature's recent support of and increased funding for Vermont's early education system. I'm here to ask you to continue to stand for the future of Vermont and her children by supporting investments in early care and education professionals through the Teach Scholarship Program, a student loan repayment assistance program for early childhood educators, and a temporary wage support program for early educators. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Can I make an appeal? I was here very early and I got missed, but my wife is, I've got to pick my wife up at the Ethan Allen Express in 20 minutes. So Rich Larson, I should have been 5th.
I didn't see it, but we'll take care of you. Yeah, you can, matter of fact, if there's only 2 people left.
Oh, okay.
So if there's no objections, yes, ma'am.
I may have, I signed in on this paper over there.
Oh, maybe there's one left over there.
I think I'm the only name on that list.
Yes, you are.
Rich Larson, I've got you here. I must have, but I've got you marked off as,
Well,
I'm sorry,
Say it
my
again,
mistake, I would guess.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, go ahead and
I
do,
appreciate this opportunity, and I'm here basically speaking for the small-scale business community in Vermont. Rich Larson, my wife and I have Larson Farm and Creamery, and I'm here to request your support for the Working Lands Enterprise Fund this year. I urge you to strongly support the Working Land Enterprise Fund by approving their request for an appropriation of $3 million to fund their programs. In 2017, Larson Farm obtained a Working Land Enterprise matching grant of $19,000, matching grant, to expand our product line in our young value-added dairy business. At the time, our sales volume was still very small and did not generate enough cash flow to engage a consultant and invest in the necessary equipment and supplies to make our Italian gelato and Icelandic skier. And the Working Land Enterprise Grant bridged that gap for us. Now, 2 years later, and with the help of that Working Lands Enterprise Grant, we have perfected our gelato recipes and are currently selling our gelato into New York City and Rutland and Bennington counties. I recently signed an agreement with Wilcox Ice Cream to distribute our gelato throughout Vermont and in up and down the Connecticut River Valley and into New York. At a time when conventional dairies are closing, our very small 30-cow organic Jersey farm now employs 2 full-time and 3 part-time employees. Thanks to the Working Land Enterprise Grant funds used to improve our product line, we now generate $250,000 in gross revenue and expect by the end of the year to be grossing over $300,000 in our very small dairy farm, while providing employment for 5 hardworking Vermonters. I urge you strongly to support the Working Land Enterprise request for funding. It is a very competitive process, assisting only those entrepreneurs with a strong business plan and a high likelihood of success. And we're feeding Vermont and providing employment. So thank you for your support of the Working Lands Enterprise Fund.
Thank you. And by the way, I love gelato.
Oh.
I gotta find out where your place
I
is.
can vouch for that.
The Whittle Street Market.
You got a lot of support in this room.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Chris Holquist. Is that it?
Mentor connector.
Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Chris.
So I'm Chris Holquist. I'm the Executive Director of the Mentor Connector, Rutland County Youth and Family Mentoring Organization. And so I am here on behalf of the Vermont Mentoring Grants and the Vermont After School. So as many of you might know, the Mentor Connector gets 3% of its funding through state funds. And as you know, that we support over 175 youth and 15 families each year with our funds, and all of our youth we serve are vulnerable youth. Vermont has, throughout all of our neighbor programs, we support over 2,000 youth through one-on-one mentoring across Vermont. And we match them with one-on-one mentors who are supportive, caring adults who build community around each youth. Without such programs as these, youth would likely end up continuing the cycle of addiction and high-risk behaviors that they live in. So I asked for support for funding for $175,000 in the mentoring grants that's within the DCF budget. Concurrently, Vermont After School, Rutland and Fairhaven, as you may know, are implementing something called the Vermont Youth Project, which we're so proud of. And the goal of that is to have this community be the best community for youth. We look to increase access to after-school programming for all youth and support. As you may know, 60% of Rutland youth don't feel safe in school, and 40% of Rutland youth say that they don't feel safe within their community. Half of all Vermont's youth are not engaged in any after-school program, and 2 out of 3 Vermont parents believe after-school programming reduces their likelihood of reduces the likelihood for youth of high-risk behaviors. 88% of Vermont parents support public funding for after-school programming, and every dollar invested in high-quality after-school programming saves Vermont taxpayers $2.18. So I ask for your support of Bill H775, which is the Youth Act, which 2 of you already signed on for, and that is to create a youth council, and that's currently assigned to the House Operations Committee. And I ask for your support for appropriating $2.5 million annually so that all Vermont kids and families have access to high-quality after-school programming. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Chris Adams from Rutland. How you doing? Good. How are you?
Good. My name is Chris Adams, and I'm a co-director with the Southwest Vermont Council on Aging. I know many of you folks have supported the council a lot in the past, so we appreciate your prior support. I'm just gonna have a brief statement that I'll read, and I'll try not to cough through it. I'm just getting over the flu, so. I'm here tonight to speak in support of one of V4A's, Vermont Association of Area Agencies on Aging's key priorities, the Older Vermonters Act, and specifically annual funding increases for the Choices for Care program. The Choices for Care program, as you folks likely know, provides a long-term package of services and supports to eligible older Vermonters to allow them to have the flexibility and care needed to age in their own homes with dignity and health. Vermont's AAA's asked for Choices for Care funding increases that are in line with annual nursing home increases. This year's request is a 2% increase, which equates to roughly $1.50 per hour more per client.
SVCOA served 456 choices for care clients in 2019, a number that is likely to rise moving forward given Vermont's aging demographics. Average per client nursing home costs in Vermont are roughly double the cost of average choices for care cost per client, meaning that choices for care services already provide significant cost savings along with a number of other valuable benefits. Annual choices for care rate increases for home and community-based providers in line with annual nursing home increases will ensure that SVCOA and the other AAAs across Vermont are able to maintain the current level of choices for care support to those who want to be able to stay in their own homes as they get older. When Vermonters can age in a setting of their choice, we see better health outcomes, stronger communities, and significant savings compared to nursing home care. I ask that Vermont's legislators support the Older Vermonters Act and annual rate increases for home and community-based providers under the Choices for Care program. Thank you for your time and service to the state of Vermont.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, sir. And the next one is Mary Crowley from Rutland.
If you want to be a legislator, you have to have stamina, don't you? Caffeine. Over 20 years ago, when I was teaching art at Rutland High School, I learned about PEGTV and its programming. PEG was then located at what is now Stafford Technical Center. So I went over and I talked to the people in charge, and I wondered if they would be willing to take my art class. And the answer was yes. So I took my students over, and one student demonstrated how to draw, and the other followed his lead. And we were on television. Good grief. So I was hooked. And I had the chance to share my passion for art with other people. Recently, I was talking to an acquaintance, and she told me she enjoyed the music on Arts and More, which I host now. She said how lucky we are to have PEGTV, and I feel the same way. That's why I'm here. On the public channel, people can share their passion for cooking, history, pets, dance, art, whatever they love. On the education channel, we have a chance to see local school boards in action. On the government channel, we can watch city and town boards, and we can watch you. My favorite selection on PEGTV is the Halloween parade. If I can't get there, I know I can watch it on PEG, live or after the fact. With all the bad news coming our way, tuning into PEGTV is a chance to hear some good news, as well as to stay in touch with people in our local area. Local people connecting with local people. That's PEGTV. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
So, the last person here on is Wilda White. Okay. Gotta cross that T.
I think I missed the sign-up sheet. I was getting my kids situated. I would.
See what?
She missed the sign-up sheet.
Well, after Wilda White, then we will open this up for somebody, others like yourself.
Good evening. Thank you for convening this session here in Rutland. My name is Wilda White. I live in Poultney. I am not affiliated with any organization. However, I am here to ask you to fund in the amount of $540,000 Pathways Vermont, opening up a branch here in Rutland County. I was formerly the executive director of an organization called Vermont Psychiatric Survivors, which during my tenure there advocated on behalf of people who were discriminated against because of mental illness. And one of the things that I discovered during my tenure was the connection between homelessness and ER crowding, emergency room crowding, emergency room prolonged waits, as well as the problems that we see in psychiatric wards where people cannot be released because they have nowhere to go due to homelessness. And I know I attended a recent Appropriations Committee meeting where the Commissioner of the Department of Mental Health actually asked you to fund more to allocate funding because there were people stuck in the hospital who did not need to be there because they had nowhere to go. I've done both qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis and have discovered that in Rutland County, about 75% of the people who were who were going to the emergency department were doing so because they were homeless. That is, they would go there, they would say that they were suicidal, they would get admitted simply because they needed a place to stay. Either they were cold, they were flooded, their tents were flooded. And so I think that right now the state is kind of investing, I don't even call it investment, they're spending money in the mental health realm on a crisis basis. And an investment in housing would alleviate or obviate the need to always respond to mental health issues in forms of a crisis, because housing is so fundamental to recovery from a mental health condition, and oftentimes a mental health condition will cause homelessness, and it's very difficult to get housed again. I know that from personal experience. I had a medication-induced psychotic break. At the time, I was an attorney. I was on the faculty at University of California, Berkeley, and despite all my wealth and my social capital, I ended up homeless for 2 years and lived illegally in a commercial building. And only because of my social capital that I was able to borrow money from friends was I able to become housed again. And so I know the connection between housing, emergency rooms, psychiatric wards, and recovering from mental health conditions. And I think that this $540,000 investment in Rutland County would go a long ways toward alleviating some of the problems that you see and are funding on a crisis basis. And so I think it's a savings. There's so many, I mean, everybody here deserves the money that they're requesting, and I know it's very difficult to decide, and I hope you can fund them all. But I do believe this is an investment, and I hope that it doesn't count how many people are here asking for it, because you will see the payoff and the payback from investing in housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's everybody that has signed up. Are there folks here that would like to speak that maybe didn't sign up? Okay. You want to go first, ma'am? Okay.
Thank you for making time for me. I know it's been a long night. My name's Vicki Warfield, and I'm actually testifying to the same issue that Wilda White just testified to. I'm the outreach coordinator at Vermont Psychiatric Survivors, and my work has brought me face to face with the reality of the housing crisis in Vermont. I'd like to urge legislators to take advantage of an opportunity to address homelessness in Rutland County by supporting the expansion of Pathways' already successful Housing First program into Rutland County. Pathways is asking for $580,000 to offer this program to residents of Rutland County, which I believe will pay for itself in the cost saved by supporting Vermonters in meeting basic needs to attain self-sufficiency. Vermont Psychiatric Survivors believes that housing is a basic human right. Our communities can't claim to support a person's mental health when that person has no place to live. For the past several months, I've worked as a patient advocate at the Brattleboro Retreat, which sees Vermonters from across the state. My job was to meet with patients to ensure that their needs were being met. And yet, overwhelmingly, the most common concern patients mentioned was not their psychiatric care, but the urgent concern around not having safe and reliable housing. I got to see firsthand the level of care provided by housing programs across the state as I supported patients with their discharge plans. Pathways stood out as truly exemplary in their responsiveness and level of wraparound services. When you don't have a consistent rental history, it can be extremely difficult to find a landlord willing to rent to you. Pathways takes this seriously, increasing the housing units available to homeless individuals by maintaining landlord relationships. To my knowledge, Pathways Housing First program is the only housing program in Vermont to have specific staff dedicated to maintaining landlord relationships, which is essential to combating the stigma faced by many individuals facing homelessness. I've seen the level of involvement and the concern that they show towards their clients, showing flexibility and determination in meeting individual needs. They do an amazing job of addressing a need of vital importance to many Vermonters. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this matter to your attention, and I would be happy to speak further about this outside of this meeting with anyone interested, as this is a matter I feel very strongly about. Thank you.
Can I have some contact information? A
Yeah.
phone number or email or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll,
Leave your phone on the counter here.
Why don't we give her the sheet?
What's that?
Give her the sign-up sheet. And she, because you'll have that.
I guess I could.
Yeah, just have her put it on the sheet.
Yeah, just put all your contact information there.
Was there,
We have one more.
do you want to speak, ma'am?
We got another.
Okay, two more want to speak. Yep.
Hi. Sorry about that. I've never been to one of these meetings, so I didn't know I need to come in and sign in and all of that. My name is Jenna LaPlante. I am a resident of West Rutland. I'm a native of Rutland County, born in Rutland Hospital. Did the classic leave here when I was a teen. I went and studied and worked in major cities, most recently San Francisco, also Berkeley area, running programs there. I'm a social worker for mostly homeless and multiply diagnosed adult populations. I returned here to Vermont to try to raise my son and was kind of forlorn to find that we were, especially in Rutland County, behind the eight ball in terms of best practices. So I'm here also to ask to support the expansion of Pathways Vermont into Rutland County. $580,000 to support people in a housing first model, which is a nationally established best practice. It is on SAMHSA's website. It has been published in all kinds of academic journals as the best way to stably maintain people outside of higher cost facilities. There's all kinds of research. I'm happy to send it. I've sent some to Senator Hooker that I have obtained myself. I was running a program in San Francisco where we partnered with a Housing First program almost exactly like Pathways. And what you can do is you can take folks who are just racking up insane bills through emergency room visits and inpatient psych hospitalizations. Here in Rutland County, I was running the adult residential programs for Rutland Mental Health. And I found just firsthand that there were clients stuck in this higher level of care than they needed to be because of two things. One, lack of housing, period, that they didn't have. But two, lack of access to it because Rutland Mental Health is not using the same model that Pathways is. Pathways is using a housing first approach, and they are the only, to my knowledge, agency in the state of Vermont that is using this nationally established best practice. Most programs are still using the model that was previously used, which is giving housing to people after they prove stable from mental health or substance use. When you do that, you heard folks from psychiatric survivors, it's pretty darn hard to become stabilized when you don't have a roof over your head. So there's been, from a heart place, people came up with this model 20, 30 years ago. From a head place, it's been well established and researched in other areas of the country and in the 6 counties that Pathways is currently serving for the last 10 years as a major reduction in cost to institutionalization. So I really, really request that you guys would expand Pathways into Rutland. I have no affiliation. I just really find that it's unfair that we don't have access to those services here in a county where we have high substance use, high homelessness, high mental health, and we have our ER clogged up with people sitting there on our crisis team going crazy with people saying they're suicidal because they're tent flooded, because they're cold, because they're this. And they are suicidal because they don't have a house. So please, please look at putting the money for Pathways. And again, I recognize you've been asked with a lot of things tonight, and they all sound really lovely. So I do not envy any of you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you. One more would like to speak, ma'am?
First of all, I just want to say my name is Marcia Bassett. I'm a parent. I've worked at Rutland Regional Medical Center for 34 years. And I have a son that I got who's lived with me. He's 29, and he's lived with me because his mother had a lot of issues, and his father was in the prison. And I was given this child because his parents could not support him. They had mental health issues, and they had a criminal background. And in fact, he met his birth father when my son was 19, and it still didn't work out well. And I spend my nights awake trying to figure out how I can help this kid get a job. He's had several jobs that lasted the total of 3 months. He had great help. He inherited a lot of issues, but he had a lot of really good help from Rutland Mental Health when Rutland Mental Health could take in the family and the kids. But when he became an adult, suddenly it was like a switch went off, and all he got was a case manager for an hour. This is a kid who has a school IEP plan that started when he was in kindergarten, and it was like this thick when he graduated from high school. This kid has tons of problems. But I want him to find supported employment. I've talked to the case manager till I'm blue in the face, and we don't have money for that. There are several things in the state of Vermont that don't work really well. Being able to get transportation and having housing would be a great start. I live in Chittenden. For 5 years, I rode with somebody who worked at the bus. And because I'm an employee of the hospital, I can ride for free. So while I was saving money by not buying a car, I could get the ride out of Chittenden. There's no bus in Chittenden for people like me, so you have to either learn to ride with your friend or you don't get to work. And it would have been great if we had transportation that's better in this state, and housing, and supported employment for these kids who he's a kid, he's a young adult, he's 29, I'm sorry, but there's nothing there for him. And he tried to go to McDonald's, and I understand he has autism, he has a lot of issues, but these kids just you're out of school, drop you off. And now he wants to own a house, and I'm thinking to myself, this is never going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's no American dream for him. I know it, you know it, but I wish that when you sit there in those chairs, you're thinking, I wish you'd think, I'm sure you do, about the people who in this country and in this very state have to go get their food. They don't have transportation. And by the way, I signed up for this gentleman's program to be a mentor connector. I met this little girl, and because I live in Chittenden and she lives in Poultney, she's been on the list for over a year. And we're about to hopefully find support and get together. So I'm totally into helping this little girl be supported. And my other program that I do with my coworker here is we do a program called WRAP, which is Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And you literally talk to people who have mental health issues, and you start with them and how they feel when they're good. And you go from there. What keeps you feeling good? And it is now a worldwide program. I've talked for more than 2 minutes, so I apologize for that. But thank you for listening to me. I'm sure you can't just go home. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak? Well, if not, then thank you very much for coming, folks. And we will take this,
Karen?
all this information, your names, your needs, all go to the Appropriations Committee in the House tomorrow. And at 9:30, we are going to start reviewing it, and can't tell you what will happen. That's not my decision. It's the committee's decision, and then ultimately the legislature's, including the Senate's decision. So, and it has quite a path to travel. But anyways, that's what'll happen tomorrow, and I appreciate your coming out
Hey, Karen?
tonight.